Why should I get interested in and research resistance money?
Resistance Money is the name of a book that I recently published with two other co-authors. We're academics, and in particular, we're academic philosophers. So it's a good question. Why should anyone pay attention to what philosophers, much less academic philosophers, have to say about Bitcoin? Here's a couple of things that set Resistance Money apart from many other Bitcoin books. First, because it's written by academics, it's very thoroughly researched with lots of resources, over 500 sources, footnotes, and entries in the bibliography. Second, it's comprehensive in its approach, where other Bitcoin books only look at, for example, monetary policy, or only look at financial inclusion, or only look at Bitcoin as an investable asset. We actually provide an ethical framework to evaluate Bitcoin along many dimensions and to evaluate not just its usefulness for one person, but rather to answer the question whether it's good for the world as a whole. So we look at Bitcoin from the perspective of monetary institutions, of privacy, of financial inclusion, of possible negative and positive externalities, its security model, and answer about 25 different objections to Bitcoin throughout the course of the book. So perhaps the third thing that sets it apart and that makes it interesting for readers, at least in our experience, is that we really try to take the critics seriously. This is not cheerleading for the choir. Rather, we try to state the objections so well that when the critics write to us, they say, yes, that's what I meant. That first paragraph where you set up the objection about Bitcoin being a Ponzi scheme, that is exactly my view. And you said it better than I could. When a critic tells us that, we know that we're doing our job well. And we try to do that throughout. There are literally 25 objections scattered throughout the book that we address. So this isn't cheerleading. It's an attempt to give an honest evaluation. And you can guess, without knowing anything more about me, if you know Jake's podcast, the evaluation is positive. But there are qualms and quirks and caveats along the way. So we really try to be intellectually honest about all of that and not just try to pump the corn or convince people to buy this thing without actually understanding it.
Awesome introduction, Andrew. Thank you. I confess, I haven't finished it. I was like, come on, Jake, finish the book before you get
Jake,
Andrew
there's
on the
about
show.
8 billion people who are in that very situation. So you're in a good place.
I think I'm probably about 60 to 70% of the way through.
Oh, thank you.
And I would absolutely echo, I'm sure you've heard this before, but it's very thorough. And you haven't unturned any stone that's obvious. And I haven't even finished the book, right? But what I love is I'm an investor. I'm looking at like, what can I buy? How long should I hold it for? When should I sell? Why should I do this stuff? And Bitcoin's just this thing that's just come into my life and just taken more and more mind share. And because it just does an incredible job of store of value with good property rights and not being debased on the back end. It's just extraordinarily good at that one seemingly simple job. And so when I come across a book like this, I'm like, okay, who are the guys that wrote this? Why do they have expertise? And it comes through very clearly on the book alone. So from a first principles perspective, let me read it. Do I think this is true? Yes or no? And it's just yes every single time. But what's fun is let's dig a little deeper into a bit about you guys, the team that created it. When you say you're an academic, what does that mean? And in particular, this idea of a philosopher as well.
Long ago, I learned this about myself. I loved to argue. And I was an annoying little kid who would just take any weird position and argue with adults around me. Anyone who would listen.
So annoying. I know exactly.
Incredibly annoying.
Yeah.
So I thought that the thing for me to do would be to be a lawyer. After all, you not only get to argue, but you get paid. So that seemed like the thing to do. And I planned to do that all the way up until my final year of university. But I missed the law school admissions exam that summer before my final year because I was up all night fighting with my girlfriend the night before.
Classic.
So like, okay, I cannot walk into the most important test of my life having pulled an all-nighter, the exam 3 hours later. So I kind of just put pause on that plan. And then I thought, well, I love philosophy. I was a philosophy major, and I thought that would prepare me to be a lawyer. Maybe I could just take the graduate school admissions exam instead and apply to PhD programs in philosophy. So I always knew that I liked philosophy. I liked to argue. I liked that part of philosophy. But the other part about it that attracted me was concerned with ideas and abstraction, trying to see beyond particulars of a case and something very concrete to see the principles behind the case, the more abstract forces at play, and see how they apply to other cases. So it's an attraction to abstraction, too, that led me to philosophy. And this is something that philosophers have in common with economists who look not just to the economy, but rather to the forces that drive it. That's what price theory is all about, for example. So it's those things in particular that led me to try to be an academic in philosophy. And I specialized, taught, and did research in a number of areas that had nothing to do with money or with Bitcoin. But along the way, Jake, my students dragged me into the real world. They had to go get jobs, and they wanted to talk at the dining hall all the time about money, about salary, about this pull that it had over their hearts, the worries they had about it at night. And these are 22-year-old kids who are already thinking about retirement plans and their portfolio and negotiating salaries. So I started to teach a class on money that spoke to those concerns, an interdisciplinary class about the psychology, philosophy, politics, economics of money. And perhaps it will be of no surprise to you at all that they also wanted to talk about Bitcoin. So that's how the academic side of me got pulled into thinking about money and more concrete concerns once again. So I guess I come full circle from wanting to be a lawyer and make a bunch of money, arguing with people about ideas through philosophy, and back to arguing about ideas, including those that concern money.